Wouldn't it be nice if you could write without overthinking every single word you put on the page? Well, there's a secret I learned about writer's block that gave me the ability to write no matter how stuck I feel. In this video, I'm gonna show you the technique I learned that cured my writer's block, how I used it to come up with infinite ideas, and the mindset shift that will get you through your next draft faster than ever. First, you need to know the #1 mistake that holds back every aspiring screenwriter so you don't end up lost in first draft purgatory. Writer's block, it can feel like you're like trapped in quicksand. You struggle with all your might, but every time you try to escape, you're just digging yourself deeper so you become even more trapped. This happens when we try way too hard to make every single draft perfect. We'll spend so much time searching for the right words to say, and instead, we won't say anything at all. I've got news for you. Your first draft, it is never going to be perfect. I used to try to make every single word I wrote perfect, and because of this, it was rare for me to finish a scene, let alone an entire screenplay. But once I found this technique, it was like a dam broke loose and ideas just started pouring out of me. The funny thing is, when we were kids, we used this technique all the time and we didn't even realize we were doing it. Like when you were a kid, you were in a lower brain state, you were kind of stupid, but you hadn't developed all the negative self-destructive thoughts that are holding you back now. You just unleash any thought you had to the world. So if you can open up that curious part of your brain again using this technique, you'll stop holding back your writing with criticism and skepticism, and instead, you'll just let every thought that you have just flow right out of you. The key to doing this is shutting off your conscious thinking, because conscious thought, it goes directly against creative thought. When your conscious voice is interfering with your screenwriting, it starts telling you things like, no, that's stupid, or no one's gonna like that, or seriously, the fact that you even pondered a thought like that means you should just go chug a bottle of Windex right now. Instead of listening to your creative thoughts, your entire project is completely driven by these negative analytical thoughts. And guess what? Nothing ever gets written. You just keep it stored in your head and never give it an outlet of any kind. Your ability to shut your conscious brain off is the only way you'll ever be able to overcome your fear of the blank page. How do you expect to write anything when your own brain is constantly berating every single thought that you have? I mean, the main reason a lot of us suffer from such negative thoughts is because of all the work we've seen from these uber successful screenwriters. Like, how do they manage to write such perfect stories? The snappy dialogue, groundbreaking plot twist. It seems like they just write like that on their first try. The only reason they get to a point where they can craft such compelling stories is because they've already gone through all the pain. They're just a lot better at hiding it. And that's the first step to getting over writer's block: embracing it. One of the most renowned authors of all time described writing like this: when I write, I feel like an armless, legless man with a crayon in his mouth. Do you know who said this? Kurt Vonnegut. If Kurt Vonnegut would feel this way when he wrote, what gives you the right to feel any differently? So stop worrying about being comfortable when you sit down to write. That's only something that you get to earn after you've already gone through all this pain. But lucky for you, this technique that I'm gonna show you is exactly how I get through writing, no matter how much pain I'm feeling. But okay, you're saying all these things about this technique. How does it actually work? Well, the crazy thing is, I actually discovered it from something that has nothing to do with writing. Growing up, I was not a social person. I was the quiet kid in school, the one walking through the hallway with my headphones down, just staring at the floor the whole time, and if someone came up to me, then I would poop my pants. Not really, I lied. At one point, I wanted to learn how to get better at conversation. The secret ended up being exactly the same as writing: to stop letting conscious thoughts get in the way and just say what's on your mind. Obviously, there are some boundaries here, like being offensive and somewhat socially attuned, but it's just the concept of letting your quirkiness shine rather than trying to hide it from everyone. I learned something known as the talk forever drill. Basically, you start with a single sentence and then you take a word from that sentence and you say another sentence. Sounds simple enough, right? So let's say the first thing I say is that television is turned off right now. Right Now is one of my favorite songs from Van Halen. Van Halen is the first band I ever saw live. I actually saw Adam Sandler live once too. And you just keep going. You just keep taking one of those words and bringing it into your next sentence. Obviously, unless you're a weirdo, you'd never actually speak this way in conversation. The idea is just, it unlocks your ability to keep talking and say whatever is on your mind without judging any of it. So I applied this technique to screenwriting and turned it into what I call the Write Forever drill. It's very similar to the Talk Forever drill, but it's not exactly the same. So if you want to learn how to do it properly, I'm gonna share that with you in a second, because you might think that applying this to something like writing could just make everything that you write meaningless. Think of the process you go through when you have a goal as simple as picking up a pen. You know, you wanna write something, so you look for the pen. And when you see it, you grab it and you start writing. Simple, right? But think of all the nuances of thought that have to go into that entire process. First, you have the goal of finding the pen. So you look around and your brain scans the environment to find out where the pen is. Then once you see the pen, you have to walk to the pen. Then you extend your hand out towards the pen. You grasp your hand around the pen and you lift it up in the air. And you bring it closer to the page, and so on and so forth until you're finally writing. Now, are you consciously thinking of all these things? Probably not. So, like, how overloaded do you think you would be if you were? You've simply done it so many times that your brain unconsciously just does all these steps for you. The same applies to writing. Your brain is a goal-striving mechanism. So if you start writing your story and have a general goal for where you want it to go, your brain's just gonna naturally figure it out for you. You've read enough books and seen enough movies that it understands the structure for a narrative better than you could ever consciously learn about. Not only that, but this mode of thinking, it's liberating. Things just start to spill out of you that never would have otherwise. Like, you stop fighting your subconscious and instead you let it work for you, because that's what true creativity is. It's when you let your brain work on its own without trying so hard to silence it. At this stage in your writing, you want it to be messy. That's the only way you can get to like all those raw, real ideas that you have. When you're doing this, you're gonna write stuff down that makes you go like, did I really just say that? And that's often a good thing, because you're gonna let yourself say things that you never would have allowed while being guided by your negative thoughts. This authenticity is one of the most crucial parts of good writing. If you silence your voice, you're cutting the world off from the very thing that makes you unique. The secret to the Write Forever drill is that if you do it correctly, it's impossible for you to be inauthentic. So how do you actually practice the Write Forever drill when it comes to a specific screenplay? Similar to the Talk Forever drill, you're still letting each sentence work off one another, but it's not so much about the words within the sentences, it's actually even simpler. And I know, it's writing. How can it not be about the words? I mean, that's what writing is. It's words. Every time you write a sentence, just write the next idea that comes to your mind, no matter how stupid it might seem in the moment, and just keep going with that every single sentence in your screenplay. The first time I tried this, I think I wrote like 30 pages in a day. I had never done that before, but you don't question your ideas at all. You're still gonna have those thoughts of like, this is stupid or this doesn't make any sense. Don't try to stop these thoughts. Just ignore, act like they're not you. Like there's someone like arguing with you while you're writing your screenplay that you don't care about their opinion, saying it's stupid, and you go against them. Instead, just replace them. Like, let's say one sentence in your screenplay is, they enter the driveway. And then for whatever reason, the next thing that comes to mind is, the entire house explodes. Maybe you tell yourself, oh, that feels way too Michael Bay-ish, or that's completely unrealistic. This would never happen. I can't write this. Oh, yes, you can. And you're going to. I can't stress this enough. When ideas like this come to you, there's a reason they come to you. Don't fight that reason. Your job is to figure out what that reason is, to dive deeper into it. And the only way to do that is to just kind of roll with it, to continue writing and see what else comes out of it. It might not even make it into the second draft, but you're not worried about that. All you're worried about right now is finishing the first draft. I can't tell you how many times I've had a clear outline for a story, and then I get to a certain point of the actual writing, and I just have a completely different idea. When I keep going with it, I get a totally different story. Using an outline, it can force you into a corner. And I want to highlight, I'm not saying to never use an outline. I'm just saying it can't hurt to experiment with a new style, right? To me, the point of a first draft is not to start off like knowing where you're going. During the first draft, you know about as much as the viewer knows. And that's what really makes this exercise powerful, embracing that your first draft, inevitably, it's gonna be horrible. Aaron Sorkin's first draft for The American President, it was over 300 pages. You know why? Because he wasn't worried about the length at the time. All he was doing was writing his thoughts. He kept going and going until he felt it was right to end it. I mean, you'd think that he'd realize it was too long by page 200, right? But he didn't care. He just spewed whatever came to his mind and fixed it up afterwards. Then he took out everything that wasn't part of the story. That's how they made The American President. And also, a little fact here, all the pages that didn't make it into the movie actually became The West Wing. You might not care, but I think that's cool. The idea is to literally let anything happen. Like once you truly embrace that your first draft is gonna be bad, You just let everything spill out of you. Even if you have the thought that one of your characters should like grab his crotch and say something weird, just let him do it. Like you don't think about how an Oscar-winning screenwriter would never write it. You just write it. The key thing to remember here is this is not going to be your final draft. You're going to have to come back to it later and then bring that analytical thinking to it, but you can't worry about that right now. This is just a vomit draft, the only purpose of which is just to give your project some legs. During a vomit draft, you're still figuring out what the story's even about. You know, like who are your characters? What are you trying to say? Then you can come back with an editor's eye. Just think of it as practice. You need to build the habit of writing without any judgmental thoughts interfering, of being able to look at your project and just detach your ego from it. So now you've got a solution for what to do when experiencing writer's block. Only your writer's block is kind of irrelevant if you can't actually find the time to write. Well, the key to fitting writing into your schedule is a lot easier than you think, and I'll show you how to do exactly that with this video here.